So welcome everybody to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is the space and the place where you get to explore what it means to be human on this earth at this time. Today's guest, well, before I get into today's guest, I just want to mention that we do have something special going on right now. If you go to our website, yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com, and go to the comment area and leave us a comment as to why you think your spiritual journey would be of interest to our audience. You may be the lucky person to be interviewed on this podcast. So let us know about your journey. And you might be on this podcast sometime in the future. So our guest today is Amy Lynn. She's practiced in the field of psychology for over 20 years, helping thousands of patients find hope and healing. She's the proud mother of two incredible kids who have amazing families of their own, including all her wonderful grands. So congratulations, Grandma. Amy runs a private practice in the heart of downtown Sioux City. She offers mindful meditation seminars and empowerment workshops worldwide. She's a master's degree in psychology, clinical mental health, and addictions therapy. She's a nationally certified professional counselor, a licensed psychotherapist, and a wellness coach in the areas of empowerment, personal discovery, and spiritual growth. And with that, we just have so much to talk about. But Amy, as you know, we'd like you to start out with your personal spiritual journey from childhood till now. And then we'll get into some of the great things that you've been doing. And I'm going to put your most recent book on display right there. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and let's hear about your journey.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, and thanks for having me on this show. Going clear back to childhood, that's where you like to start with your guests. I was raised in a small town, DeKalb, Illinois. My father was earning his doctorate at the University of Northern Illinois, and so my mom and dad were actually sorority parents, and they took care of the sorority in order for him to earn his doctoral. And so I grew up being what they called the AOPI angel. I was their little mascot. I had a lot of sorority ladies who would take me for walks and scoop me up under their wings. And, you know, back to my spiritual journey, I think was a time of joy in my life, just utter joy. You know, we're all born with that just natural instinct to enjoy life and people. And yeah, it was just amazing. After a time, my folks started encountering some hardships, fighting back and forth. My father, through stress and other life challenges, started going astray, started drinking quite a bit. And I guess back to my spiritual journey, that's kind of where fighting started coming into my life. I started, you know, developing some challenges. We moved to Sioux City, Iowa, here where I live now. And through that time, too, my dad began a professorship. And again, with stress and drinking and fighting back and forth, my parents, I guess, started to show me that life was not as easy as I had once hoped it would be when I was little, you know. We started going to church here. Dutch Reformed is my background. I listened to your story, Bob, and you were a Catholic or Catholic in your tradition?
No, actually, I've interviewed a lot of ex-Catholics. But no, my background is more Presbyterian and Methodist.
Okay. Back to that traditional Christianity, though, the Dutch Reformed is how I grew up, and, kind of a lot like the Presbyterian, the Catholicism. We went to church every Sunday and, heard the sermons and got a real solid idea of, heaven and hell and right and wrong. And I would fill up my cup. It would feel so good with Sunday school and all that. And, yet then I'd get home and it'd be back to that fighting and, the back and forth between my mom and dad. And so I would say, to summarize, back then, I kind of got the feeling that, there was just a lot of hardship. And my folks finally split up, and I went to live with my dad. I thought maybe I could save him or maybe help him overcome his drinking problem at the time. My mom had really instilled in me that that was something that I should try to do, being I was the oldest girl, and took
How old were you at the time that they split up?
Yeah, I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah, and so just put all of the energy I could into trying to help my dad get well.
Yeah. Now, you have a sister, right?
Yeah, my sister at the time was 8, and so I'm a little bit older than she. And
so, did she stay with your mother when you went with your father?
Yeah, she did initially, and although later she joined and came to live with my father as well. My mom was pretty severely mentally ill, so there was a lot of struggle around that. And so eventually my sister was able to come too. And at a young age, I kind of became head of that household, trying to keep everybody well and keep the house running, and kind of lost my childhood and all that. And again, back to my spiritual journey through that time, I always knew that God was near. I always had a strong faith through all the struggle, through all the hardship. Ever since I was little, my grandma gave me a children's Bible, and I would read the 23rd Psalm over and over sometimes when my parents were fighting, and just gave me such comfort. And I really carried those words with me in my heart. And through that time, I just held on to that the Lord was with me and given me the strength to try to hold the family together.
Yeah. It sort of made you grow up fast, it sounds like.
Yeah. Grew up probably too fast. And that's a really good point, Bob, because with growing up fast and all the struggle in family, I think I branched off a little bit quicker than I should have as well, and was anxious to start my own life, right? Create something different, create something better without conflict. And so I married really young and started my own family and loved my kids to death, but that wasn't without hardship too. I encountered some abuse there, and we ended up splitting up, and that left me as a single parent, and here I was raising a household again.
So how old were your children when that happened, that you split up?
They were 3 and 3 months, so real young.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just really young. And by that time, just to be honest and transparent, I had started to drink a little bit myself, just to, kind of cope with all of the life's challenges that had come my way. Thankfully, not while I was expecting or pregnant or anything, but, after I'd had the children, I kind of developed a little bit of that same habit that my father had had. And that, I believe, is when the Lord really came back in my life strong. It was one morning I'll never forget. The kids, I would wake them up on Saturday morning and give them big breakfast and they would watch their cartoons, and I would get a little break and just kind of reflect to start my weekend, and just really felt the Lord knocking on my door saying, it's time to live healthy. I had lost my dad by that point. In fact, my dad was only 46 when he passed away of alcoholism. And so I was probably 21 at the time he died. And I don't know, I was just filled with such a strong, compelling inspiration that I didn't want to follow that same path.
Yeah.
And so on that day, I chose to give up my own drinking, and just completely changed my life around to where I didn't have to repeat that same cycle. And
so what form did this take? I mean, I've had people on this podcast before describe they just had to fall on their knees and just give it all over to God and just say, I can't do this by myself. I need you in my life, or, that's the only way I'm going to get through this. So was there a specific physical sensation or what form did this take, this realization for you?
Definitely. Thank you for asking. I had huge pine trees in front of my yard. And I went out front. It was a nice morning. And I fell to my knees. And again, I just was filled with memories / flashbacks of, my father and his life and his struggles and his ultimate death. And I was just blessed with that. I would say goosebumps, God bumps. I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned on your show, God bumps is what I call them, where it's like a feeling of electricity, a feeling of inspiration, and like a touch of the divine. And I just knew in that moment that I needed to be well, that I needed to give up the drinking, that I needed to be the best mom that I could be to my children, live a good long life. I'm going to be 57 in December.
Okay.
And take a different path.
Yeah.
So just an overwhelming sense of being touched by the divine, the Holy Spirit. It's just amazing. And I went back in, and everything almost looked different to me. I remember it vividly. Colors were brighter. I saw my kids different. I felt more connected to self, to others, to life. It's really given new life on that day. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, you're in your early 20s, and somehow you managed to not only get a bachelor's degree, but to get your master's degree, and you chose psychology and therapy and counseling as a profession. So how did that come about from this moment where you're a single mother trying to keep things together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. And even going back further than that, when I was young, I wanted to be a beautician. That was always my dream. I always wanted to do hair. My father wanted me to be an attorney. He kept pushing. He taught pre-law as part of his professorship, and we kind of settled on myself getting a business degree. And so initially, when I went to college, I got my degree in business. But back to your question, I had made my living the first probably 20 years of my kids' life in business as a single mom again. things were tight, finances were tight. I needed to keep a roof over our head and food and, nice daycare and clothes. And so I made a decent living in the business environment. But I always had a heart for psychology. In fact, I ended up minoring in psychology in my undergrad degree, and just always had a heart to really help people and, help people find a better way. And I started writing too throughout the time. I started writing clear back in 2018, even back to this new book of mine, Sacred Garden. I've been writing for about 20 years and I always wanted to take that further. And so when my kids were through high school themselves, and my daughter was completely through college, my son was close, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go into the field of psychology full time. A leap of faith, trust in my heart's calling. And so in my early 40s, I went back to school and earned my higher degrees in psychology, clinical mental health, and obtained my degree to develop my private practice. And it was a hard choice, but a beautiful choice that I would never take back. I'm really happy with it today. Mm-hmm.
Well, it sounds like your business background helped with the private practice, because I know people just starting out trying to get a private practice going, and it's without a good mind for business, that's a tough road to go.
So that ended up coming in handy after all.
Yeah.
But I just love it. I built my practice in downtown Sioux City here, where we had moved when I was young, and for 20 years now I've been treating just tons of folks who struggle with depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and just life struggles. Who just need some empowerment. I do a lot of coaching as well on helping people build in spirit and connect to their best selves, to their higher selves, the spirituality within. And that is probably my greatest honor, is to be able to help people along their own spiritual journeys.
Yeah. Well, in having read your most recent book, and I guess this is book number 8 for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So take us back to book number 1. How did that come about, and what was the driving force behind you deciding to become an author?
Okay, yeah. Well, back again to near the beginning of my journey. Let's go back to my father's death even. I was just 21. He was 46. He had always been a writer. And, clear back when I was really little, I would write with him. I would just scribble, of course, and draw and doodle. But he had this office that was incredible. And he wrote as well. And I would pretend like I was writing with him. And it was one of the best things we did together. And, after he passed, like I'd mentioned, I chose to give up drinking and sobriety and a healthy lifestyle after that. And shortly after I made that choice, I just found myself inspired. I just found myself filled with bits of inspiration and almost like an inner calling. And so my first book was based on my own recovery from addiction. And I titled it Hidden Castle, because for so many years I protected. I kind of kept myself in a cocoon, so to speak, with a lot of the hardships that I'd faced, with a lot of the struggles that happened in my family and in my own journey early on. I used the metaphor of a hidden castle, kind of locking myself away, so to speak. And protecting, and I think a lot of folks will put on kind of that shiny outer appearance, or take all the steps they need to try to be successful, keep the roof over my kids' heads, and raise them well. And inside I was really struggling, and so I depicted that in a book. I originally just thought it would be just kind of a journaling manuscript. I wasn't going to do anything with it, and some folks encouraged me to seek publication, just as an outreach to others. And I didn't know much about it. I did a little bit of research. I took the manuscript, and back in 1998, Word was pretty raw, and technology was so different. But I printed it out, I sent it around, and I just trusted in that inspiration and that faith that I was feeling, and the nudging that I was getting from others. And a Christian publisher early on called Genesis Communications, and then it was distributed through Evergreen Press, released it. And I was able to share my journey of recovery with so many people. It was really lovely. Yeah.
So was part of your journey at that point, were you involved in AA? And was that a piece of then your first book was, the journey through AA and out the other side?
Yeah, it sure was, Bob. Yeah. In fact, I included the 12 steps in my first and second book, The 12 Steps of Recovery. I incorporated that into healing and recovery of addictions of all types, whether it be drinking or gambling or sex addiction, or there's just so many addictions, shopping that people get caught up in.
Yeah.
So I was able to, share my heart in a way that brought recovery and healing to a lot of folks struggling with addictions. And I continue to do that also in my practice. I sought also a degree in addictions therapy as another part of my master's program. And just so nice to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope for a better purpose, to help others along their own paths.
Well, I think there's something about when we make ourselves vulnerable to others, that it's a way of showing our love. That vulnerability and that raw emotion, and just allowing ourselves to expose ourselves for the world is a way of saying, this is my love, and I'm giving it to you freely and openly, and that comes through in your writing. And I think that's I guess an attractive thing that I found as I went through your latest book and looked at just the beginning meditation, and I used that guided meditation in one of my spiritual groups, and it was extremely well received. So I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. And thank you for sharing my work with others. Yeah.
Well, obviously producing 8 books is quite a journey in and of itself. So would you say that all of your books have come from a journaling aspect, that each one, just took people through the next step and the next step and the next step in your life's journey?
Some of them definitely are based on journaling. The early ones, for sure. Sacred Garden had its origination through journaling. The part two of the book, the meditations and the mantras and the prayers, definitely came out of my own journaling as I was inspired. But not all of them. Some have come just through, again, that inspiration. And I formed and outlined the book before Sacred Garden, You're Worth It, A Journey to Self-Love. That was born out of my need to help empower women. And with that, I started with an outline. So it just depends on the nature of what I'm writing. But definitely, I like how you mentioned reaching out from a place of vulnerability and sharing our hearts with others. Back to my first book, In Hidden Castle, and as I depicted how many years I lived not being vulnerable, how many years I lived in survival mode. It's nice to be able to open up my heart wide, as wide as I can, and share that in a vulnerable way with others because, I believe we touch the world in that way.
So throughout this current book, you have quotes from Mark Nepo, you have quotes from A Course in Miracles, and those are two two of my favorite sources of spiritual enrichment. So looking at the Course in Miracles and what role that may have played in your life or maybe continuing to play in your life, how did you get introduced to A Course in Miracles? And I know that book was a revelation brought through a therapist and two people steeped in psychiatry. So was that part of the attraction for A Course in Miracles to you? I guess I should stop talking and just say, how did all this come about for you with The Course in Miracles?
Yeah, good question. And I love the course. I've been a student for 20 years. And to answer your question, another author, Marianne Williamson, who's one of my favorites. I began reading A Return to Love and some of her other titles and just really felt a lot of healing and enrichment and strong spirituality in Williamson's work. And Marianne refers a lot back to the Course in Miracles. And I became curious, and I was at a Barnes & Noble years ago and actually found the original text of the Course in the Barnes & Noble, and I picked it up and I started going through the lessons and just love how the Course talks about living in a forgiven world. Back to my upbringing, back to my Dutch Reformed roots. I was raised thinking so dichotomously, I would say, of heaven and hell. And the Course just really purports that heaven is here, that Christ is here, that the kingdom is within. And it just started to change my spiritual view. I felt more connected. I felt more alive. I just felt so much more like the Lord was right here in my heart versus somewhere far away. And so I became a student and still to this day practice the lessons and incorporate a lot of the Course in my own teachings and psychotherapy, as well as you mentioned, in Sacred Garden in my writing.
Many people find it difficult to go through the Course on their own, and they end up joining a study group or work through it with others. And has your approach just been to do it yourself, or have you been working on it with a group?
Well, I attended some of Marianne Williamson's online lectures on
Right,
the Course,
right. I'm
which were
familiar
helpful.
with those. Yeah.
As far as studying, I've done a lot of self-study, but back to my sister, you asked me at the beginning of this podcast, don't you have a younger sister? And sure enough, we've done a lot of growing together. And, we went through the same sort of struggles and have done a lot of healing together too from, earlier family abuse that we suffered. And we've done a lot of healing through the Course. We have a lot of the books that are based on the Course. And so sometimes we'll just study it together even. And as you say, it's complicated and it's not easy to wrap your head around. Sometimes I'll read 2 or 3 sentences and I'll just have to meditate on them for a while. Or she and I will talk about them, or she'll read and I'll listen, or I'll read and she listens. And we kind of talk about what that means to us in our lives, what it's meant to us along the way of our journey, what it can mean for the present and the future. And I like how you point out that the Course is meant to be studied, right? That's why
Right.
I believe they propose the idea of becoming a student of the Course. And, back to that, I believe deep down we're students our whole lives long. In one of the chapters in my book, Sacred Garden, I title it on spiritual evolution. I'm a believer that life is a teacher and we're learning our whole lives long. And the Course points that out too. We're students of the Course, students of life. I guess many lessons come our way and we can learn from them or not. And back to that evolutionary process and like an ascension, evolution. We can evolve as we learn our lessons, as we change certain patterns, like I'd said years ago when I quit drinking and chose health and wellness. And I believe choice is so powerful. Every day we have the power to choose love or fear. And that's back to the Course as well, And the more we choose love, the more we choose to act out of love, and like you'd mentioned me sharing my heart out of love to help others, I just believe the more fully we evolve, the higher state of being we achieve. And I think that's lifelong. I don't think it ever ends. No.
Yeah. So in your book, you talk about the importance of a particular lake that has brought you a lot of comfort over the years, and I guess that began when your father was still alive. So could you talk about that cycle of having that comfort in that lake and then being away from it and then coming back, and what that's meant to you?
Sure, yeah. Back to my upbringing, the lake is called Lake Okoboji. It's in the state of Iowa, not too far from here. And when I was little, I would say it was my safe haven. Again, my parents fought so much, and yet when we went to the lake, there was a peace about it. Maybe it was just getting away from the stress. But they'd take my sister and I up there, and I really connected with the Lord up there too. I would take our boat out early in the morning. Early in the morning, the seagulls would just cover the lake. There wouldn't be many boats out yet. And I would just drift and reflect and say prayers. And it was such a safe haven for me. I felt so connected, almost like a portal to heaven above. And shortly after my dad died, we weren't able to go up there anymore. It was my dad's place, and as part of the estate and, all of the ending of his life, we had to let that go. And yeah, it was sad. And yet, always in my heart, I just held those memories. And I just was, again, back to inspiration deep down, inspired to someday get back there. And sure enough, one day I had been visiting there just for a day, sitting on a beach, saying a few prayers, doing a little bit of journaling. And I was inspired to go back by the old place where we grew up. And I drove in and ran into an old friend. And sure enough, that old friend had become the owner of the resort. And, you know, as inspiration would have it, and or fate, he'd said, well, you know, there's a property open here, and I'm thinking about bringing a new home on. And, you know, curiously, I haven't put it up for sale yet. Would you be interested? And I just found that a huge blessing. And I was able at the time to invest in that. And so I brought my family back to the place where I grew up. And through the course of, you know, bringing the home there and finishing it up. And I think this was back in 1995, or excuse me, 2015. Back in 95 was when we had to sell, but back in 2015, we were able to get up there again. And yeah, it was just like picking up where I left off, Bob.
Yeah.
You know, getting out in the boat again, now drifting on the lake again, just like I used to, connecting with the Lord on the lake like I have always so strongly. It's just been such a blessing for me to be able to be back up there.
Well, when I read about that in your book, I just thought there's that synchronicity that often shows up in our lives, that if we're paying attention, you know, the universe just offers up the way for us. And all we have to do is be open to it and accept it. And you know, these things will manifest in our lives on an ongoing basis. And it sounds to me like you've been able to do that, to turn your life around and just make such a wonderful experience of it. And the sharing that you do, your willingness to share that with others, is just such a gift. So thank you for that. I'm sure your patients, who are the recipients of what you're able to offer, up close and personal, really benefit from it. So there's I want to represent your book correctly, because it's really what some people would say is a self-help book. If we were to categorize it, that it's an interactive book, that a person should be ready to journal throughout that experience. And because I haven't experienced your other books, have you used that same format with some of your other books, or is this a new format that you've experimented with?
This is a new format. This book, I would say, I reach more deeply into my own heart, as well as write it and design it to help the reader reach most deeply into their own heart. You mentioned the journaling, and I do a lot of narrative work in my practice. And what that is a lot of folks that come in for psychotherapy have struggles or have encountered struggles in their lifetime, it becomes a story or a narrative, we'll say. And that narrative becomes so fixed within a person's psyche that a lot of times it will contribute to their own struggles later, or their own depiction of how they feel about themselves, or some folks struggle with negative self-talk, or just feelings of either self-criticism or back to depression. A lot of folks will hold a negative view of self, others in the world, and that'll come from a story that really they lived, and it becomes like lodged in the psyche and the mind and even the heart. So narrative work helps folks break that up, question it, look at it, evaluate it, and find healing. And so in this book, I include a lot of prompts to encourage readers to write and challenge and ultimately heal any false myths, is what I call them, or misunderstandings, or even false beliefs that they still carry about who they are, or what the world looks like, or it just helps them obtain a clearer grasp of themselves in life. And so, yeah, I included a lot of that in this book, which is different for me. It was my hope to reach more people with a lot of the work I do in practice here.
Yeah.
To be able to share that on a broader scale.
Yeah, it seems to me that the stories we tell ourselves are often stories about our limitations, about what we can't do and who we are not. And if you're able to articulate that story or write it down, then you can look at it objectively and from a distance and just look at it as a story and say, okay, is that a story that's serving me? Or is that a story that used to be okay because it protected me, but now I don't need that story anymore? And I just found that the way that you presented in the book would be helpful to anyone if they would go ahead and do the work. And I guess that's part of the commitment, to say, okay, I'm not just going to read these words, I'm going to do the work as I go through this. And the words take on a lot more meaning than if you journal all the way through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard from different readers already, and some even spend the majority of the time in part 2 of the book because they enjoy the meditations and the mantras and the prayers, which I'm very grateful for. In fact, I put part 2 in audio form also. And so I have a website, amylynsacredgarden.com, where people can listen to those. So some people just, grow through that. And I am so grateful that they're able to. And then there's been other readers who, like you'd said, they've picked up the pen and they've done all the work in there and the prompts, and they've written their story out and looked at it more objectively, like you said. And I love your word choice. Realize that those stories don't serve them anymore.
Yeah.
And have grown and left them in a different place. There's another chapter in my book called Beauty from Ashes. They've allowed their story to just drift into the past, let it go, and pick up all the beauty, the strength, the victory, the things that they've learned through their challenges, and move forward in new ways. Yeah. And it's been really neat to hear that.
So you describe yourself in the book as a Christian mystic.
Mm-hmm.
So could you explain what that means to you?
Sure. Yeah. when, again, back to my upbringing, I was raised Dutch Reformed, and some more traditional Christianity. I learned when I was young that there was this distinct heaven and a distinct hell, kind of like a dichotomous sort of idea was instilled in me. And I think I spent a good majority of my life more in fear than in love. My religion, my beliefs came more out of like a fear base. And, today I believe in my book, I write of the tapestries of heaven and hell. And, I just believe that there's so much energy here on the earth that we can experience heaven and hell, heaven or hell, again, in our lifetime based on choices we make, based on living in love versus fear. I've definitely experienced strong glimpses and sensations of heaven here, which is, again, a metaphor that I turned into the title Sacred Garden. I believe we can create space where we can connect with ourselves, the divine, the Lord, just so purely and so beautifully. It almost feels like you're in heaven. Yeah. And, we can fall short in choices that lead us to more miserable circumstances as well, or challenges or hardships, which can feel a lot like hell. So the mystic, I would say, is just feeling those tapestries, just feeling the energy of what I'd learned in my traditional religion. And I'm still a believer. I love the Lord. When I say my prayers, I always still pray to Jesus, because that's what, I say in my book too, he's my guru. Jesus is my guru, because I practice a lot of Buddhism as well. I love those traditions. I weave all 27 principles of Buddhism also throughout the book. And so I guess mystical in that I believe, like Khalil Gibran would describe, that there's many fingers of faith. It's like a tree of faith, and there's many fingers, and they all lead to love, to God, to the divine, to goodness. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got to say that there's more to talk about, but we're just about out of time. And at this point in the podcast, I always ask the guest to leave our audience with some words of wisdom. I know you have lots of them because the book is full of them. But if you only had 2 minutes to say, audience, here's the main thing that I would like you to come away with out of today's discussion, what would that be?
Sure. We live in such a busy society. It seems like so many are on the run. I would suggest slow down to the audience. Slow down and connect. Connect to self, connect to your loved ones, connect to the divine, whether it be through prayer, meditation, even nature. Go for nature walks. Slow down and be mindful of love, of connections, of yourself, even back to self-criticism and busyness. A lot of folks get caught up in, just trying to do better, be better. I should be this, I should be that. Be yourself, and really tap into experience who you really are, which takes pockets, we'll say, of time. Create time every day for you, for yourself, your spirit. Nurture yourself. That's such a beautiful tool that people can utilize, self-nurturing. Grab a book, or turn on some music, put on some meditations. Again, that website I'd suggested, Amy, Lynn, sacredgarden.com. I have a lot of prayers on there, mantras, meditations. take time for you, yourself and your spirit. I would say that would be what I would like to leave. Thank you for asking.
Okay, thank you so much, Amy Lynn. Of course, as usual, on our website, yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com, we will have lots of information as to the 8 books that Amy Lynn has written, as well as her website connection, so that you can find out more if you'd like to. So as usual, take from this what will serve you the best right now, put the rest on a shelf, and pull it down when you're ready for it. And until next time, this has been Your Spiritual Journey.